thank you very much for welcoming me to Taiwan. I know that all of my other colleagues as well will really enjoy this opportunity to meet with so many thoughtful educators doing such exciting work here. And I know that I personally have felt very ignorant when I arrived as to, I guess, the exciting movements and things that are going on in Taiwan and the opportunities that you have here. And Professor Chang was filling me in just a little tiny bit about just the three pillars and the changes in the laws and the legislation in Taiwan. And I really congratulate you as a group of educators for saying, yes, let's go for it and do some exciting things with that. So, thank you. Sorry, I was taken by surprise at the start. So, coming together like this, I think it's such a wonderful opportunity to share stories. And really that's probably the most effective way of us communicating with one another. So all of our schools have stories, and we've heard about three different, really different, but also some similarities, schools yesterday. We heard a little piece of their stories. And all of those stories, I think, have got people. It's always people stories behind them, driving them forward and creating our schools. I guess they're people driving them forward, and they've got vision and optimism and courage and persistence and a lot of bloody hard work goes behind these things. Plus also, of course, sometimes some lucky chance and some opportunities, but again, the courage to jump in and take those opportunities. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit, just very quickly, about my story, so you know a tiny weeny bit of who I am. I forgot to put a map like Alex, but I live in the Adelaide Hills, which is in South Australia, which is in the middle at the bottom of Australia, so right down in the south, down there. I live with my husband and my 3 daughters, and my dog, my cat, and a couple of geese, and some things like that. I love camping and travelling. I love writing, and I really love theatre, got a strong interest there. I love gardening and cooking. I love everything to do with food. I love music, but I'm very lazy about music. I never know anything about it. I just like other people to do it for me. As far as education, I really enjoyed school. So I didn't have maybe such an exciting schooling, but I did enjoy it, and I enjoyed it because I was what people would have described as a clever child. I found traditional school easy. So maybe that, sometimes I think looking back, that makes it harder to be a good teacher. I think sometimes if you struggle with learning, school learning, it makes it easier to be, or not easier, but you have a pathway into being a really effective teacher. That was something I learned much later on than perhaps some other people. So I found the work easy, but I really loved hanging around with my friends, and I liked talking. So watch out, that's the thing. So schooling was fine. Probably the most interesting thing in my schooling years was at 17, right when I finished my exams, I went to Thailand as an exchange student. And I lived for a year in a village in northeast Thailand, in a really rural area. It was so different to everybody travelling now. The whole community I lived in was not on the telephone. So in that 1 year, not only did I have to learn a new language and be in a completely different culture to my own, but I telephoned my family twice in the whole year. So no mobile phone, no Facebook, no nothing, just a letter occasionally. So, but that experience for me has been really formative as I think about it back over the years, and I feel very strongly the value of people from different communities and different cultures coming together and sharing what they do and finding out that there's lots of interesting difference, but there's also so much fundamental similarity in what we all share and do. So I'd like to try and carry that forward. I studied actually went to medical school, and we were talking about it in the car this morning because I was clever. So I got high grades, and I went to medical school. but I didn't go there for very good reasons, just because I got high grades. So for me, that was a really poor choice. And we were talking in the car this morning a lot about how, I think Carlos said it yesterday, we really hope that our students, they don't need to finish school knowing what they're going to do, but they should understand a bit about who they are. And I really hope that that's been the experience for the students that have come through in our school. Certainly, I knew nothing about who I was when I finished high school. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. I studied many things, lots of science. I actually ended up majoring in genetics and in English literature. So it's a very weird combination, but perfect for being a Montessori middle school teacher. Renaissance, you know, all that stuff. One other thing, since then I've taught in various settings, including in 2 universities, and at that time being involved in some education research. But what I did find was when I became a teacher, it was right at the time when my first daughter was entering kindergarten. And so I had 2 experiences, we as a family had 2 experiences at that time. I had massive frustration with my new students not taking any initiative in their learning. They were good students, they wanted to do well, they were very compliant and friendly and cheerful, and they enjoyed their classes, but they had no spark of independence and initiative in their learning. And so that happened right at the same time that my first daughter started kindergarten. And again, we weren't so impressed with that experience either, and we very quickly found a Montessori school nearby. So my 3 girls have now, all 3 of them have finished. Like the 2 older ones went through Montessori until grade 7, which was as far as it went, and they went to a public high school, and you know, both enjoyed the time there as well. And my youngest daughter just caught the wave and was in the first group of starting our adolescent program. So it's really interesting to hear my daughters compare their schooling experiences that they had. So she came through our middle school to grade 10, which is as far as we go. And then she went to a university, senior college, and actually now they're all in university. Sorry? Yes. Senior college, that's right. And then they're all in university now. But all of them consider themselves Montessori kids. So that was a longer story now, I can tell. Yeah. So coming to this meeting, for me, combines travel, talking about Montessori education, which is really exciting, and lots of that's the thing. It also has involved lots of food. So I'm very, very grateful to be here. Fits everything. The stories in these pictures, I just put a couple of shots in. So just from the last week at our school. So our students this term have been involved in their own independent projects, which can be about anything they're interested in. This one boy behind the apple tree here is a very shy lad, and he's very shy, extremely shy and anxious, but he loves gardening. And so for his independent project this term, he's been gardening back at the other campus with the children in the 3 to 6 class. Every week he's gone and worked with them there. But in the end, for his project, it was about working with children, it was about gardening. But in the end, we said his project was about communication. And so for his main event, his big event, which was this Wednesday, just happened, he hosted the whole preschool. So we have 2 3 to 6 classes. They all came over to our campus for the morning, and he led them in little groups on garden tours. So he had to do a lot of communication to make that happen. And he also had to communicate with his peers. So there were a group of adolescents who spent the morning doing bubble blowing and storytelling and artwork and baking for the children that came. So anyway, I just thought, how did that happen? Yeah. So Thank you. So that was really exciting. And the story behind this picture here is a group of students who'd initiated every Wednesday they have tea club, and they make pots of tea at lunchtime. Anybody is welcome, but they leave the invitation in a sort of a sly, secret hiding place. So if you find the invitation, you might choose to come to tea club. But actually at this tea party, they were planning to go to the climate action strike that was happening last week all around the world, but certainly happened in Adelaide. So lots of nice stories and things. So my main story today is about developing our Montessori adolescent program. Sorry, we're operating on two computers here. Okay, and what I thought I would do is speak fairly quickly to the, I'll speak fairly quickly to the development of the program, because a lot of people spoke about that yesterday. And what I'd really like to focus in on is what our actual program looks like. And then that way at the end, if you want to know more about the first part or the second part of it, you can ask questions about it as you go. Okay, I have a message though, and I felt really good yesterday that that message was really strengthened by the other speakers, and particularly Adam, who I think is really young back there, said something right at the beginning. And that is that, you know, we are being radical going after these kind of programs, but we're not really going after something that is so radical. And I think I speak most informally about the adolescent level of schooling, so that's what I'm speaking about today. But what we're doing with the Montessori adolescent program is not some radical, extreme, I love the words experimental, alternative, all these words, I love them, but they carry connotations of being weird and different sometimes. We're not. What we are doing is excellent middle schooling. And I want us all to be really proud of that. Whatever country or community we're in, what we're doing is what traditional educators like Dewey, Montessori, people way, way, way back many years ago, but all of the contemporary research going on in education faculties in universities around the world, we are going after what is described as appropriate and effective education for young adolescents. And we're probably doing it in a more gutsy and integrated way than is going on in, you know, pretty much any other school systems around the world. So I want us to all be really proud of that and never be apologetic about that. This was people spoke about curriculum frameworks yesterday. It's quite recent in Australia to have a national Australian curriculum. So it's been great. It's actually still in formation now, although it's what schools have been working to for probably the last 7 years, you think, Alex? 6 or 7 years. It's still not completely formed. Prior to that, each state had its own curriculum framework. But the Australian curriculum is described and managed and assessed and everything through a body called ACARA. It's an acronym for the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority. And the curriculum grew out of something called the Melbourne Declaration on Educational Goals for Young Australians. And what it says in there is that Australian governments are committed to working with all school sectors, to ensure that schools provide programs that are responsive to students' developmental and learning needs in the middle years. This is the bit familiar, and which are challenging, engaging, and rewarding. And I think if that doesn't describe the kind of program that we are at least trying to have with our students, I don't know what does. So out of that, you could go online, if you just Google ACARA or the Australian curriculum, it's quite a good functioning website. I actually really love the Australian curriculum. I whinge and moan and go, oh, it's so hard, there's so much, how can we do it all, you know, blah, 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 this is a problem, that's a problem. But actually, fundamentally, I think it is a really powerful curriculum And whilst I hear teachers in all sectors go, there's too much there, we can't possibly do it, it's absolutely ridiculous, the curriculum itself says you don't have to do all of this. It's actually really, really responsive. And I think Alex alluded to this, Adam did, Carlos did yesterday. Most registration authorities in most countries, and certainly it seems the case in Taiwan, they want us to succeed. They love what we're doing. They want us to demonstrate that we're giving an effective education to young people, and to document that appropriately and communicate that appropriately and assess that appropriately. But actually, they're filled with admiration for how Montessori schools go about doing it. And in actual fact, in Australia, the Montessori Association has got a sort of special dispensation, just like the Waldorf schools and the IB schools, that we're doing a good job. We know how we're going about it. We've got a method for it, and they trust us to do it in our own way. So one of the things I wanted to say about the Australian curriculum is there are enormous, you can go in under the sciences and you can Google any year level, you can search any year level, any discipline, and there's very detailed subject-specific descriptions in there. But the other dimensions of that curriculum, there's something called the cross-curriculum priorities. I don't know if you have something like that in Taiwan, but the cross-curriculum priorities in Australia are in fact sustainability, Indigenous Australia's history and culture, and the other one is Australia's engagement with Asia. So that's actually enshrined as a three priorities that should be touched on or connected with wherever possible across the Australian curriculum. And I think that's a really fantastic invitation to go for those things in really, really rich ways. The other element of the Australian curriculum is called the general capabilities. And people were alluding to that yesterday again in their talks. All those, I think, I wrote this down somewhere. I think Carlos, someone was talking about it, but all those things around resilience and collaboration and confidence and being creative and being able to identify problems and solve problems, all of those things that we often call the soft skills, I really dislike that term, or 21st century skills. Actually, they've been skills for 18th century, 19th century, 20th century, 21st century. But they're so important and they're being recognised now. And in the Australian curriculum, they're called the general capabilities. And again, our registration, or ACARA, this great big important body, they are very keen that these are foregrounded in schools, and that schools are not slide into being, I don't know if you guys know silo, the idea of siloing. So I'm a maths teacher, I teach about maths. I'm a history teacher, I teach about history. Actually, we teach students, and all of these capabilities are what we should be aiming to develop across education platforms at all times. So in a nutshell, obviously literacy, numeracy, ICT capability, but there's also intercultural understanding, ethical understanding. This is really important for part of Montessori, personal and social capability. So self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, social management, what we would call grace and courtesy. So it's there. They're inviting us. The other one is critical and creative thinking. Now, I've actually spoken at university education things about how I think occupations absolutely epitomise critical and creative thinking. And in fact, to me, occupations could be the engineering in STEM. So I think we're nailing all that stuff that's really important. I'm taking a long time, aren't I? But brag about this stuff. We're doing a really good job of it. Okay, so for developing our school the rationale was that we needed a pathway for Hills Montessori School cycle, we call it cycle 3, is upper elementary, to move, and so apologies, in Australia primary equals elementary. So what you say primary, we say pre-primary, so it's very confusing. So cycle 3 is upper elementary for those students through on to independent senior studies. And I will say one thing about that. In Adelaide, we're very lucky in our context. We have 3 or 4 senior-specific colleges. So we have a really good pathway for our students to go. Those colleges were set up to promote independent, effective senior learners that don't drop out in first year university. There's a real crisis with spoon-fed Year 12 students achieving excellent grades and then no resilience, no initiative, failing, tumbling, falling out of university. So these colleges have been specifically set up to address that. So for us, they're a really great pathway for our students. So what we needed was something in the middle, bridging upper elementary through to that senior studies. We wanted, of course, a school environment that responds to the characteristics and needs of young adolescents. And like I said before, we want to be able to brag that we're doing a really great example of new schooling practice because we're very vain and conceited, proud. Sure. So, and I mentioned this before. This is what the descriptions of Montessori adolescent schooling have embedded in those programs already. But again, someone alluded to this yesterday, don't be afraid to speak, Alex did, more than one language. So we talk about occupations, and all of the adults that work in our program are Montessori guides. We proudly use our language around our program, but we're not afraid to connect it to other things. So again, you should be very able to go, yeah, we're all about independent learning. All of these things are really hot buzzword things in education at the moment. The general capabilities, place-based learning, a lot of talk about that, relationship-based learning, STEM, STEAM, everywhere. I think we do a really good job of it. And the other one, I think it's true in Taiwan also, a really big, loud shout about enterprise learning. Do you have that? A lot of talk about that. Have you people come across there's a speaker from the States called Yong Zhao. Have you met Professor Yong Zhao? No? Anyway, lots of talk about enterprise, setting up businesses, all this kind of thing. Microeconomy or economy or production and exchange, Montessori would describe it as. So I think we're already doing that. So both social enterprise and personal enterprise. Okay. So I'm going to go really fast. Our school began in 1978 as a preschool. Last year was the 40th birthday and we had great big parties all year long for it. Since 1989, it's been as a preschool and primary school on a current bush site, so lots of trees and forest, quite small but very nice site in the Adelaide Hills. And we opened, the story we're talking about today is opening the secondary campus at Wairoa, and that happened in 2011. So I'll come back to that. Currently we've got 224 students enrolled from the infant program, 0 to 18 months, through to year 10. So talking about, and again I'm not going to spend a long time on it because a lot of people did yesterday, but I think it's really common that move, the push for secondary schooling often comes from parents. We want somewhere for our students to go. And that had happened several times in our primary school, but it does take a really long time and a lot of work. And sometimes the parents who are really keen, it doesn't happen quickly enough, and there's, the kids are gone, they've passed through and they're gone, and it's sort of too late. So I think when you get parents like Cynthia, who are already looking 10 years ahead for their students, that's really great, because that can sort of really carry through. This time around it did work. We had a couple of parents like Cynthia, who were really forward planners and who had excellent skills in project management. And the other thing they had, this is a little bit vague, actually was me as a parent. And that's because I was an educator just in the right place and very interested in doing it. But I was really interested in doing it for me, and I actually didn't care if my kids got there or not. As it turned out, one of them did. And now the second one always goes, "You didn't start school for me." But anyway, we did it this time. We pushed through. We set up a working party that investigated the feasibility and put a plan to the school board, which is a parent and staff school board. So there's another, have you got staff from this? Yeah, I don't know about independent schools in Taiwan, but that's always an interesting thing. 2009 they made a commitment, and then all of this, that's just nothing. That's the tip of the iceberg of what had to happen. All of those things that Adam spoke to yesterday and that Alex spoke to yesterday, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. One thing I will say is we were very lucky in the site that we found. It had previously had a progressive school on it that had closed down about 15 years before. So there were some pretty good buildings. We had to do a little bit to it, but that was probably the key piece of luck for us in that taking place. We had to show some initiative, and I know that you're going to talk about some really interesting ways of finding and being able to purchase your land for it to happen on. We also set up a unit trust, so we had investors in the school community who, it was like going shares in a rental property. That sounds a bit weird, but slowly the school is buying all of those shares back again. So I think in 2 years' time the school will fully own that site. They will have bought it from the unit trust that was set up. I went and did the orientation. We developed our program. The biggest job of all was applying for registration for new levels in the school. And for that, in a nutshell, you really have to demonstrate, the onus is on the school to demonstrate that the students will be safe, that the school has financial viability going forwards, because the government pays a lot of money for students to be educated in all school sectors in Australia. And of course you have to demonstrate the program that you're going to undertake, and that is going to satisfy the things that are necessary there. Needless to say, it was a lot of work in making that happen, but we were super excited to do that. At the very end of 2010, we hired 3 adolescent guides, and similar to Carlos yesterday, when I did all this work behind it, I wasn't sure that I would be myself working there, particularly because my daughter was in that program. And to be honest, I actually just began a PhD at that time, and in the end, I think, congratulations to all of you who are going to be involved in it. I thought this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to be there at the beginning, shaping a program in exciting ways. So anyway, I don't know, and I'm still there, so it's really good. So all of that happened. At the end of 2010, instead of just graduating our Year 7s, we had Year 7s at our primary school, we graduated the 6s and the 7s, and then the following year they commenced as the 7s and the 8s at the school. Next one. So we began the following year with 3 part-time guides. There's just a few, I found a few old photographs of the initial group who many traditions, I don't know, adolescents are very good at what we call instant tradition. So you do something one time and then they go, but we always do it that way. So there are many traditions that happen, but that was a community meeting. They found the dress-up box. They make birthday cakes for everyone. We have a lot of cake. Make birthday cakes all the time. Lots of different traditions and things going on there. So that. Okay, so I think that thing about it being very exciting to be there at the beginning. So don't worry about reading the small writing, it doesn't matter, I just fixed it for the demonstration. one thing that I'm sorry that I don't know the situation of everybody here, but I do know that it is much easier to start a program from the ground, where you're building the structure and the culture and the pedagogy and curriculum together at the same time. It's much harder to transform or reform within an existing school. And I know that personally from various projects that I worked on at the university that were school reform projects. And I take my hat off to anybody who's here, who's involved in any of the schools that are trying to make that transformation. It's worth it. Anyway, for this one, this is why I thought it was a once-in-a-lifetime chance, because we could build these things at the same time. And what I would like to do today, I think we all have a sense of the kind of culture that we're going after. I want to talk a bit about our program and how we structure things so that it's always changing, but in ways that support the culture and the kind of program that we're going after. Does that make sense? I'm not sure. Please tell me if it doesn't, and please tell me if you can't hear what I'm saying. Okay, so the bit I'm interested in here is just, it's the same one, boring, okay, back there again. Really the thing is just the last bit, which is that when we did start with 3 guys, and then we thought we'd worked really hard up until that point, then the work really began. And I think I barely slept for probably the first 3 or 4 years. Honestly, I'm not exaggerating. It was an obsession, and it meant so much work for all of us, late at night, changing things, adapting things, meeting different needs. 1 year in, we had to then demonstrate what we had been doing back to the registration authority to get approval to keep going with new year levels. It was hell in those first years. I listened to Carlos, I think. No, Adam, talking about bringing on the coordinator 2 years ahead, and then 2 teachers 1 year ahead. We had 1 week of paid employment to get the program happening. I'm very envious. Okay, so throughout 2011, 2020, yes, no, that one's good too. Yeah, that's great. 2012, 2013. We really were building and trying and changing things around. It's very interesting, this process. To come and speak to you guys, I looked back at things from the early days, and there were some keys to how we progressed that quickly became apparent. I mean, I guess we knew they were there all the time. And it's interesting, things have evolved over, we've been going for 9 years now, but the key elements are very much still there. It's really interesting, and sometimes we rediscover them, we go, oh, it'd be really good if we focused on X, Y, Z, and then we realise, actually we used to do that, but we forgot about it. So it's quite interesting to see what's happening. So they're just some catchphrases, but they're sort of touchstone keys that we would want to come back to. And I'll talk about that one. Just to give you some nutshell things, we really are a middle school program. It's Cycle 4, we call Cycle 4 is a three-year program, years 7, 8 and 9. We actually also have year 10s at our school. And the reason we do that is that one of the senior colleges only offers year 11 and year 12. So we really did that as a bridge for students who want to progress to university senior college. In fact, from next year, that college is offering year 10. The others already do that. And it will be very interesting for us to decide what we want to do. So we're also, again, at another decision-making point. Do we continue to offer year 10, or do we revert to just offering that 3-year program of year 7, 8 and 9? Obviously, they're really important aspects of it. Structurally, we operate as one adolescent community, and I think that's really important. We would our intention is to grow to well, the school principal says no more than 60 students. I say maybe not that many. So there's a little bit of a thing about that. But we would, let's say 50 to 60 students would be the top number, and we would always continue to operate as one community. But that community breaks up in different ways. So for various classes, you might be in a language group or a maths group where you'll be working with students who are similar in confidence and competence, I guess, in that area. We have a 3-year rolling humanities and science program, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. So for that one, it kind of depends what year you're in within the program as to what you're doing. And then we have huge areas of it where it's completely choice-based. It's about student preferences as to what they're doing. So it breaks up lots of different ways for lots of different things, but it always comes back to being that one community. And then we have something called advisory groups. So within that, we have 3 advisory groups with a key adult who's your go-to person and the bridge with the parents, I guess. So I have an advisory group with about 13 students at the moment, and they're anywhere from year 7 to year 10. And in the morning, we come in, we're in a big area like this. Everybody needs to hear any announcements or reminders from anyone in the community, but we sit in our 3 advisory groups. So it's an everyday chance for the advisor to just connect in, touch base, and make sure things are good with those students. Okay, so shortly I'm going to concentrate on some aspects of the program, but I thought I would focus on some of the challenges that have come up in those years. So beginning in 2011 through to now in 2020, some of the students some of the problems or challenges that have faced us, I guess, where we've needed to make some tricky decisions. One is the thing about when I say new students entering, I think you know what I mean, students who have not come up through our Montessori School program. Now we have made a decision that we do take extra students in. By far the majority of students come from our primary school, but typically we take anywhere from 2 to 4 new students in each year. And we have quite a stringent application process for them to go through. It really focuses in on them understanding what they're going after, what we're all about. And a lot of that is, you don't have to be perfect at this, and let's face it, none of them are, whether they've come through Montessori or not. But you need to want to develop as an independent learner, and you need to want to develop as a contributing member of a functioning community. So they're the 2 keys to everything, and that application process really focuses on that. They have to fill out a whole lot write some essays, like short little things, respond to various questions. There is a descriptive supporting document from parents, from another teacher, from a member of the community. There's tours where we get to chat informally to the students. There is an interview with the student, and lots of really laying out on the table what we do. So we're pretty happy with that, and to be honest, our adolescent students are very welcoming, really supportive and welcoming of new students joining the community. And to be honest, I think they're really glad to have some new faces joining the community at that point. So that's the way that decision's gone for us. Another question was senior schooling. So is that coming through okay? It's all right? Yeah? Okay. With senior schooling, we expanded until we did year 10. Again, because our students head off to a variety of destinations, so we have University Senior College at Adelaide University. We have something it's a public program called the Australian Maths and Science School that's located at Flinders University. That does a really interesting program that is almost like a Montessori cycle, so the 10s and 11s are together, and that's a very STEM-based program. There's another senior college right in the middle of the city near the markets, So it's real city life after being in our rural campus. But also we have students who go to any high school, public, private, independent, boys' schools, girls' schools, co-ed, up the hill, down the hill, religious, non-religious, you name it, they go there. In our biggest graduating year, we had students head off to 9 different schools. And honestly, they are fine. They're utterly ready to enter any program, and their biggest whinge would be that people waste too much time. So that's what we hear back from our students coming back. So I think we're sticking to this. Who knows, there might be an earth-shattering change in the future, but for now our decision is we're really happy with the senior schooling options. We're not going there. And that gives us a lot of freedom as a middle school. So our young adolescent program has heaps of freedom. We don't have to share teachers with the senior school. We don't have to worry about all the timetabling restrictions. We don't have to worry about the requirements of providing those senior subjects. We don't have to worry about year 8 girls ogling year 12 boys and all that brings with it. It's really liberating just being a middle school. So I understand everyone else's position, but for us that's a really great thing. Another challenge, I'll speak to this one when I get to talking about the program. Infrastructure. So I apologise, I'm about to show you lots of photographs. I didn't actually just put photographs of the building there, but we have one main building that we've turned a classroom into a kitchen. It's got a big common area that we can all gather in, and a couple of other classrooms and things off it. Since that time, we're a very small school, we don't have a lot of extra money, but we were able to do one building project, and you'll see that come up in the photographs. So we built a studio. And for us, we wanted that space, we said we wanted a fancy shed. That was our description. So it's a really fancy shed, we love it. So in there we do science, we do art, we do projects. I have all my maths classes up there because I like it better than being in the main building. And it turns into a fantastic venue for cafes and gatherings and dance party after the graduation at the end of the year and this sort of thing. That has been fantastic for us. Next year we'll do some renovations on the main building, but beyond that we don't have any massive plans, but certainly infrastructure's been an issue. We want a bus so we can go out more easily. And staffing, I think that's an ongoing tension and a challenge. And again, I think it was spoken to very eloquently yesterday. The young ones who need lots of adults around, but not too many adults, but lots of adults, high ratio, are the little people and the 12 to 15-year-olds. So we place a very big argument in our school. As you can imagine, it causes some tension with the primary school. They think they should have as much staffing as us, but we would far rather invest in people than in anything else that we've got there. So that's been really interesting. Okay, I'll move on from there. All right, I mentioned before sort of keys to what we're going after, and I promise I'm going to get to practical details, but I think it is very important as a staff, whoever you work with in your team, that you have a really good sense in a very short, quick way. There's something you can look at and go, are we doing this? So quite early on, this was some keys that we came up with as a staff. So when we're doing our planning, we think it would be easier to do it this way, but we look back and we go, you know what? That's preventing choice happening, this sort of thing. So we've got that, and I just want to refer to Joanna kindly printed an awful lot of my stuff in that booklet. And there is, when you get a chance to look later on, I won't go into it now, there is a longer version of this in there that we called A Prepared Environment for Young Adolescents. And that document came out of the meeting that we have. We call it Meeting in the Middle. that we have with other Montessori adolescent guides every year. We've been meeting now for 7 years, and in the first couple of years we had much discussion, and we created this document together about what we thought was important. So I don't expect you to, I'm not going to give you a test on it, I promise. But I think it's in that booklet anyway. You can come back to that and have a little bit of a look at it. So some of those keys and things that we're really looking for our program. Okay, so the way I sum it up, I promise it gets more interesting now with photographs and things like that. At the guts of any Montessori program, I believe there have to be 3 things: community, place, and work. Now this meshes very on Montessori's plan of study and work. Those elements are in there all the time. But for us, we've really summarised this as we're going. You have to have an adolescent with a few adults community where it matters. People have got to take care of each other. They've got to figure things out. They've got to have arguments about stuff. They've got to work things out and make things happen together. Okay, we currently have in the high 30s. Generally, we've had so far between 35 and 45 adolescent students in our community, and 6 to 7 adults. Not all full time, but that come in and out. Place. Our place is a semi-rural property in the Adelaide Hills. So we have about half a hectare, or just over 1 acre, and it's part of a larger estate. We're very lucky, so it's set within a bigger property that's owned by our neighbours. And on the bigger property there is an oval and beautiful gardens and an old mansion and all these things. Actually, we don't have time to go there as much as we would like to, but I really like it that we don't own it. Partly because we don't have to take care of it, but also partly because it really deals with that thing of, I'll say it in a negative way, I can't stand schools where students are over-entitled and they have all this fancy stuff and someone else takes care of it for them. In our school, we get to use this beautiful place, but we have to do it by being good neighbours. So they're very respectful relationships with all of our neighbours, and in fact our students in community work time will go down and volunteer their time to the neighbours to help take care of it. For us it's a really lovely arrangement. We've got, you'll see pictures later on, we've got a garden we've developed on it, we've got a grassy area we can run around on. We've got 1 basketball court. Other than that, we go out, we go onto the oval of the big property, or we go down. We can just walk down to the local tennis and netball courts, or we can go in and use the cricket nets, or we go back to the primary school and use the gym there. So we've got plenty for that sort of thing. So we certainly have a connection with the place and with the land. But I have to be really clear, certainly in Australia, we would not call this a farm. We would call it a permaculture smallholding, something like that, a big garden. So we have chickens, we have bees. Sometimes we borrow the school council's goats and they stay there for a while. My dog comes to school quite a lot. Everybody else's dog comes to school quite a lot. This kind of thing, but we are not a farm. And at the moment, we're not in any position to become a farm. And quite honestly, we probably don't have time to become a farm. Although we would love to have an ongoing relationship with a farming family. Some other schools in Australia have done that. They've built up a relationship where they go 2 or 3 times a year and camp on a property and help those farmers with their property. So there are many solutions to place. In fact, there are 2 Montessori schools in South Australia that have an adolescent program. The other one, this is quite exciting I think, they've just moved. So the adolescent program has just moved. And their place now, they share it with an aged care home. So they're on the same property with a lot of elderly residents. And that, for me, that's just as exciting as being on a farm. There's so many meaningful work opportunities that will come out of their relationship with their elderly neighbours. So I just want to put it out there, if you've got the opportunity, to do something like that, go for it. I think it would be fantastic. And then the third key ingredient is work. So if they have to have meaningful work, it's got to grow out of what the community needs, or the community is interested in even, or what the place needs. So, you know, there's certain things that just have to be done to look after our place. There's other exciting opportunities that come up because of our own place, whether they're building and development ones or, you know, hosting something, or because of our place, which includes the property we're on, or our primary school, or our place, which includes our local town and the Adelaide Hills. If there's an event on, we're there. You know, there's heaps of good work that comes out of that, or even further afield as we go. So I think they're the really crucial things to have. Okay, but this is also their work. So the work of those adolescents is their academic learning as well. And none of them, well, most of them agree with that. They're actually excited. They want to learn. They want to get good at this stuff. They want futures where, whether they're going to go to university or a college or some other tertiary training, or they're going to pursue some creative or enterprising or whatever they're going towards, they know that this is their work at this time. They just like to be engaged and interested while they're doing it. So this is based on the Montessori plan for study and work on the academic syllabus side, whatever it's called. And I want to mention this because I'll show you how this breaks up in our timetable as we go. Can I just pause for a second? Am I making sense? Is it please ask a question if it doesn't make sense? Okay, how am I going for time? I have used 1 hour and 10 minutes, or 1 hour and 10 minutes. Excellent. Do you need to have a little wriggle at the moment? I think wriggle your backsides. Those chairs are very unkind. So have a shake if you go. We'll get into it. So we break up the academic program in the way that we think about it. And I did mention this before. We think about, you could call them foundational studies, developmental studies. I think in the translation that became that plan of study and work, they call it psychic development. Yeah, so all of these mean the same things. It's really that development of the brain to be able to work in these ways. So for those, for languages, the other language that we learn at our school is Bahasa Indonesia. So English language development, Bahasa development, and especially, you know, also very importantly, mathematics development. And this is the words that are in our report, but really this is the morality, that being a member of community and society, how do you praise, all that sort of stuff. For those, we tend to break into developmental groups. So you'll see how that works in the timetable shortly. For cultural studies, that aspect of the program, which and I have got a slide, except I put it right down the bottom, it's a bit hard to find, of the plan of study and work. All of that preparation for adulthood and the study of humankind, all of that sort of thing, we do that in disciplinary ways and in interdisciplinary ways. And this is where we, for those of you who've seen the Hershey program, this is one structural difference that we, in the way that we've gone about it, that works for us. And I've had lots of interesting conversations with Laurie Ewart-Crocker and others about it, and we all agree we're going after the same stuff here. It's about how we organise it. So in some Montessori adolescent programs, they have they break it into humanities and occupations. And so whilst there's lots of meaningful work embedded there, in that structural organisation, occupations is carrying the science curriculum. It has the responsibility for carrying the science curriculum. The slight tweak in our school is that we do disciplinary studies, so we have not a huge amount of time, but we have studies in core humanities and in core sciences. So definitely go to a class some of the time when you're scheduled for science and for humanities. And then we also have occupations. occupations, and occupations takes the biggest space when you see the timetable. For us, that means that occupations can be anything. That's what I'd really like to focus on that a little bit today. For us, occupations have to be collective endeavours. They've got to have meaningful job or work or project at the heart of them, and they definitely are going to have important learning attached or connected or as part of them. But that learning could be science, and it often is. It could be mathematics, and it often is. It's always got language in there, and quite often it's got humanities connections as well as definitely technology. I think that's where technology sits in the Montessori program. So in a moment I'll show you how that sits in NRP. The other thing we have, I mentioned before, is their independent projects. So whilst we think of occupations as being collective group undertakings, students also have the opportunity to undertake something individually as well during the year. But all of those we think would come under, obviously there's overlap between all of these. And so literature studies, for example, our book groups, we call them, but they're text studies. They obviously have language involved in them. They're a cultural sharing of literature and knowledge, and they've also got lots of self-expression in them as well. And the self-expression area, that's completely choice-based. So you could be with anybody depending on what their choices have been for that sort of experimentation. I'll go on and show you how it breaks up a little bit. Now our timetable or schedule, it's just a document, but I think they're quite interesting to speak to because I certainly, as a coordinator, I'm fascinated. If anybody wants to share their timetable with me, I want to see it. It's really, really interesting to see how it breaks up. Now this looks more fragmented than it actually is, and I have to say it's changing. Does yours change a lot? They always change. You're trying to work this out. But this is sort of the current setup. So in a typical week, there are some different weeks, but in a typical week, wherever there's blue, there are some students engaged in independent work. So in the common area, or if they've arranged to go somewhere else, there are students who are just getting on with their work independently. But what's also happening at that time is different groups might have a workshop or a meeting. Does that make sense? So, for example, I would see, at the moment this changes, we used to do it 3 times, at the moment we're doing it twice a week. Maybe we used to go back to 3 times. I would see my maths groups once either there or there on a Monday morning, and at the moment I'm seeing them again on a Wednesday afternoon. It'll be different next student. Whether students at any given time are either studying core science or core humanities, they're focusing on one or the other. So different groups will come out and go to the areas for their sessions in that time. What happens is they don't have anywhere near the contact time that they would have in a typical high school, because these students know how to get on and do their own work and make their own decisions about when they're going to do it. So, foundation and senior. Yeah. It changes all the time. Actually, at the moment, they're called camels and goats. And don't worry, I don't know about you guys.
Foundation and senior. So you're 3 years when the senior.
It changes a little bit. Please ignore the F and the S at the moment. So yeah. I'll show you something else a little later on. That's more to guide the students. But the point for you folk is that, so for example, on a Wednesday morning, most students have a really uninterrupted morning, except they have a workshop in Mahasa Indonesia through that morning in the different groups. They know when they're going to their teacher. The other more coloured areas, they're what we call the choosing subjects. So the first day of our term every term is it's always on a Tuesday, and we call it Tuesday. And if anybody's interested, actually, I brought a lot of different documents if you would want to see it. But there's a Tuesday sheet, and on it they put down their preferences for what occupation they're interested in taking that term, and it could be anything, for which literature group they would like to be in. So say we're studying films as text in that term, there'll be 3 different ones on offer, and there's a little bit of information about it. And you can say, my first preference is this, my second preference is this, blah, 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 this sort of thing. Or, I don't care between those 2. Or, I've already done that one, I don't want to do it, I want to do one of these, whatever. And then we sort those groups out. And then on Thursdays, they have 2 blocks where there's a lot of creative and physical expression choices going. Usually there's about 4 different choices running at any one time. And again, that's all about choosing. So some sort of key features for us in the program are that Thursday is a really big community day. Because we actually cook lunch twice a week. That's unusual in Australian schools, but we have a cooking program. So whoever's in the cooking group at that time, they're planning the menu, and they do a really easy lunch on Tuesdays, and they do a feast on Thursdays. So if you're in the cooking group, you'll actually be cooking all the way through the morning there. Everyone else, I want to talk about community work in a minute. Everyone else is in community work. So that's a really cool day. Occupations is the one area that gets the most time in the timetable. So whatever you've chosen as your interdisciplinary project or your occupation, that's pretty much all Monday afternoon and all Friday afternoon. It can go right through community work on Friday afternoon. And in addition, we would take at least one Friday every term that we just call Occupations Day, so that if people want to plan big field trips or big work on that day, it's not interrupting anything else. Everybody's just gone with their group doing whatever they're going to do on that day. Some other things that I would say are key. We're not residential. It would be so, I love that experience of living in community when I took the orientation. It would be so amazing. It's not the right fit for our school in our context at this time and for the foreseeable future. So we try to meet that sense of being able to play together and hang out and just be together a bit more in a couple of ways. One of them is that we stay open late 2 nights a week, and that's just optional. If you want to stay, stay. You might be working on a project with someone, you might be playing a board game, you might be doing barista training, you might be running. There's lots of different student-led activities. Sometimes there's one kid who just loves illustrating and kind of anime and manga and all that sort of stuff. He runs a little illustration group. I've got a creative writing group. We meet sometimes. The robotics team at the moment, they're staying on one of the afternoons. It's always a yummy afternoon tea, that sort of thing. So that's been a really nice way of doing that, and it's completely optional. Probably about half the students stay each late afternoon as an average. The other thing is we go away. So we go away together at least 3 times a year on camps, and that's as good as we can do. We're not residential, but anyway, that seems to work quite well for the moment. Some other things, as I said, you sit in your advisory group in the morning just to have that sense of communicating. Actually, what we do in this independent time is we locate with our advisor. So it is independent work time, and students do go off for a Bahasa session, but we get people to co-locate with their advisors so that you've got that chance to catch up and work through some things. Digressing slightly, we found there were a lot of different things tools and things that we've used in terms of self-reflection or managing different aspects of school life, and in the Rapport they were all over the place in all sorts of ways, and we ended up putting together a sort of advisory journal where we collected up all of those sort of tools and things that we've developed. So sometimes on those Tuesday afternoons we might be doing some of the things that are in the advisory journal as well. If anyone's interested in seeing that, grab it and have a look at that afterwards. So chuck that one down there. Community work, though, I really want to, for me, it's one of my favourite bits of the program. So we have a shorter block on Friday afternoon, and we have that on Thursday morning, and sometimes we have that on the last day of term and in other places as well. For me, community work time is one of those keys to being able to be flexible and responsive. You have to find built-in areas of your program where, like in these, choice is embedded in there. Of course there's choice within how you express yourself in science and in humanities and in what investigation you take on in maths or in whatever. There's lots and lots of choice. But we build in these spaces where there's ownership. You opted, you wanted to be in this occupation. What are you talking about? You know, there's a real sense that I've chosen to be there. Similarly, community work time is one of those spaces that can become anything. So if there's a group that really need to finish working on something, if we're running a cafe, that happens then. If we've got, well, all the work that place, like bigger work than just the afternoon chores, that's a group always, they call it inside deep clean. I don't know why they call it that, that's what they call it. People come to school on that morning and they sign up for what they're going to get stuck into. It might be, I have to meet my occupations group because we're still wobbling our jam or whatever we're doing. Or it might be wood chopping, it might be working with the groundsman, it might be out in the garden, it might, but there's one group, they don't like getting their hands dirty outside, that's the truth. They always, it's run by two boys, and they always put themselves down for inside deep clean, and they pull all the furniture away and mop all the floors and, you know, get into the corners and that sort of thing. So I encourage you, whatever works for you folk, and so many things we want to build in, including uninterrupted work time, that's a crucial one. Try and build in choice, and try and build in spaces that can be flexible. So within each week, that's the sort of buffer zone that community work provides. And then within each term, there are certain weeks where we go, yeah, Friday we're doing whatever we like, or today's going to be catch-up day, or whatever. Building some spaces where they can be a little bit. That would be my one takeaway on that. Are there any questions about the schedule? Or, like, don't be too pinned on the details. Like I said, they change, but in how we organise it. Oh, sorry, that's taking me back.
Could you explain more about the campaign?
Sorry, yeah.
Could you explain more about the campaign you mentioned about 3 times a year?
Yes, actually, can I talk? I will talk about that a little bit later on. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes, certainly. That's a really good question. Okay, so I'll pick that.
Community work. They choose
Yeah.
It's not like the guides have said, oh, you need to do it in a deep clean meeting. It's something that children have identified as needing work.
Bit of both.
Yeah.
So there's certain things that are on there every week. That groundsman's there, maintenance and grounds is on there, and some students will try that out in 1 week. Other students love working with Robert when he comes, so they always sign up for that. But in the morning, he will put up on the board everything that needs doing, and anybody can do that, students or adults. And then we quickly gather when we get in, and people just figure out where everybody's going to be, and off they go. If you're a cook, you've got no choice. You're in the kitchen making us like things, so that's what I'm doing. A student made this for me a couple of years ago, just very quickly, and I liked it because it also gave a sense that previous document is the shape of the week or a week. This one is kind of more about the shape of the year, or the flavours of the year. So in Taiwan, do you have 3 terms or 4 terms? 2 terms. So like semesters and maybe it's a semester. We currently have 4 school terms. The last term, which we're just about to go to, forget it, we call it a half term. So full of this, that and the other that hardly any learning happens, but real other learning happens, of course. But for us, the length of the school term is roughly 9 or 10 weeks, and it's a good length for things. It works well for us in terms of planning, so we do tend to plan to our term structure. But these were sort of the flavours of the year. They're all there all the time, but they're the things that are really strongly I don't know, happening in those terms. So the first term is very much about community and place, and that will be reflected in, when I talk to you about the occupations, you can see that that's really reflected to it. Head out and about, this is all about advisory, you know, sense of community within advisory, boys and girls together, then the whole community together, all about building community up. This I'll talk about later on. But the second term is a really strong emphasis on performance and oral language. And that's because at the end of the term we have a cabaret season. So a lot of the creative elements come into that. It's also probably the biggest occupation the world's ever seen, is putting on a theatre season. Massive. But that means there's a big emphasis in the kinds of choices we're making through that year. She chose to put this on, that's the standardised testing. So that's still there. Term 3, we have a big, again, it's always going on, but there's some really rich occupations that tend to run in term 3 because it's not being interrupted by the performance. And also this, in term 3, that's when all of our students, 7, 8 and 9, take the same topic in science and humanities. I spoke before about having core science and core humanities, and I didn't actually intend it to go in there, but I noticed that Joanne has put in that book again. There's a document that explains how we figured out what are the important, for us, the important bits in the Australian curriculum for science and humanities, and how we organise that into our 3-year program. So again, if you're interested, I think it's too complicated to talk about here, but if you're interested in having a conversation about that, I'll talk with you over that document as to how we structure it. Relevant to here is that in term 3, everybody is doing the same topics. It's the only term where 7, 8, 9 are all doing the same subject in science and in humanities. And we call it our Earth Systems and Sustainability term. So for example, in core science, over 3 years, we look at astronomy and earth and space, geology and earth science, and ecology, so life science on Earth. And Tim's got similar geography focuses within his humanities program, and we go on an extended field trip that's related to our studies in those areas in that term. Another chance for a camp, but actually it's a curriculum-based camp in that term. Term 4 is all about celebration and transition. So it comes back to community again. There are so many events on, including welcoming the transitioning Year 6 students who are coming up, and all of the stuff that goes with that, and more camps and things in there. I will speak briefly to the camps. So we have this one, which is community building. We walk to that, it's quite local. We are far too busy with this. No camps in that term, never. Too busy. In this one we have the Learning Links trip, so we go somewhere in South Australia and it relates to science and humanities. And in term 4, another one of my favourite things, that's the sort of outdoor ed-based camp. And there's 2 options. So base camp is lots, you know, so for example this year their base camp is near a beach. They're doing going surfing classes and kayaking and trying this and trying that. They also camp in tents and they learn how to cook on a camp stove. Meanwhile, if you want to, and you're in year 8 or above, you can go on the 5-day expedition, which is most often is a kayaking expedition. So I like going on that one. And that's the students who they really want to do it. It's 5 days away. They're completely self-cater in their tent groups. There's a lot of leadership around travelling and camping and that sort of thing. So those 3 are always built into the year in one form or another. We also, every second year, we have an optional trip to Indonesia. Obviously that's an extra cost, so not everybody does that. But what we do then is we have a place-based, obviously, immersion experience while we're there. So they do a similar place-based study for 2 weeks for the students who are back at school, and they actually go out nearly every day on field trips and things, and they sleep over a night at school and do a whole lot of cool stuff back there as well. And then every now and then other things pop up. So for example, the girls have initiated the beginning of next term, they want to have a sleepover at school, so for all girls. So things like that happen as well. Cool. Did that kind of answer the camp question? Is that okay? We're happy to talk more about it. Love the camp. Before I speak to this, I absolutely want to echo what people said yesterday, and I couldn't find my photograph of my staff team. I was travelling around this morning trying to find it. The most important thing is the team of adults that we have there. I absolutely admire and enjoy the company of, even if I sometimes get frustrated with the group of adults that I work with. And when I come back to the idea of my daughter, who was actually most photographed being in the program, I couldn't think of adults that I would most like my child to be influenced by. So the team of adults that you have working in an adolescent program, I know people say it cannot be said enough, they are one of the key materials in the environment. Your adolescents, I really wish I had the photo of the adults here, but your adolescents are looking at those adults all of the time. They've got eyes in the back of their head, they've got feelers on their ears, they've got antennas. They are watching those adults all the time about all the different ways that you can be an adult. So it's not just individually, those people are role models, it's how they interact as a team. So someone yesterday spoke about, I think it's really important that they see us talking and chatting and working together. They see us figuring out things when we've got different opinions about it. They see us make cups of tea or coffee for each other. Now sometimes I feel guilty about it. Someone from my team always brings me a coffee during the morning advisory time. And I feel a bit guilty that it was never me, because I'm always flat out at that time in the morning. However, I often have administrative time in the afternoon, and I'll usually bring a cup of tea into the other, stop drinking coffee by the afternoon. So bring a cup of tea into the other guys, and I thought about it, and I thought, actually, it's really important that the adolescents see that we do this for one another, and that we say thanks. You know, tiny win-win things. So I've got a great team, men, women, various ages, various experiences. They all have to be generous. They all have to be people who enjoy working with adolescents. Of course, it's true. They have to have humour, be creative, be problem solvers. They have to be very flexible because we change things so often. If someone's really uptight about change, probably going to struggle in our environment. Okay? They have to be really good collaborators. They have to be intelligent. They have to know their stuff. So know their curriculum well. So that team of adults, we do all of our planning together. 9 years in, we've got our rough framework, all these things I'm showing you. We know how it works. We know we've got to figure out which occupations we're going to have next term. We've already had that meeting because I was coming to Taiwan. Usually we have it in the holidays. We have to do we plan ahead at the beginning of the year for the whole year. We plan a planning meeting for each term. We have 2 meetings a week where we get together during the week. And of course we have many formal chats as we go along. But the planning of the content is done by all of us. All of the teachers, the actual people with teaching qualifications, they have specialist responsibilities as well. So I have key responsibility to make sure that the students in our program get enough science learning. Tim has key responsibilities for humanities learning. Alice for language, Dave for maths. However, I also teach maths and Tim also teaches. People are all over the place in there. Everybody teaches occupations. Everybody takes a book group. Most people, not everybody works on a Thursday, but most people, except me because I'm not very creative, most people take a creative session on a Thursday as well. So people are involved in the interdisciplinary aspects of the program, but they all have specialist expertise that they bring to the program as well. We share the Indonesian teacher with the primary school. We share the PE teacher with the primary school. And I think these are the really important adults. We have a number of guides who are not officially school teachers. We have a kitchen expert, kitchen specialist. We have an art specialist. We have a garden specialist, and we have our maintenance fellow. Could be a woman, but it is a fellow. Those people are adults who are just as much teachers in these adolescents' lives as the people who've got official duty of care and responsibility for assessment and reporting, all those teacher duties that carry on behind the scenes. So I really encourage you to embrace what every adult in school can do. Oh, we have also had a learning support assistant. She's fantastic. She's also a fantastic sewer, so she does everything with textiles and those sorts of offerings within the school. Okay? Really look to what other interests and other things that the adults that have a main role in your school, what else can they do in enrichment programs? That's really good for us. So, planning. I'll just take a break. We describe it as an occupation-based program. By that, I mean we have interdisciplinary studies and disciplinary studies in there, but we have to have plenty of things that are meaningful and relevant to community in place. We also have that sort of the work, those projects, and the studies. Now, the way I describe the kind of planning of that, so it's really broad. That do that. We call it a responsive planning process, and I kind of visualise, this is really the teaching team, as standing in the middle and kind of being able to point their eyes in two different directions, or pull out of two different buckets at the same time when they're doing their planning. So they need to really know the formal curriculum. Okay, you can't get past it, and it's a big fraud if you've got lovely people who dance around with the goats and make nice things and that sort of thing. That's fantastic, and that actually is the most important thing, is that you have these lovely, wholesome role models to adults. But actually, they need to know the formal school curriculum really well. If they know it inside out, then they can be really responsive with it. So whilst there's the key concepts and skills, ways of thinking and working embedded in whatever systemic formal curriculum you have to meet. So for us, it's the Australian curriculum paired with the Montessori curriculum. The other really cool thing that's going on over here is what are the opportunities that are happening? What needs to happen on the place or the property? What does the community need? What events are coming up? What cool things are happening in the local community? Is there an amazing exhibition in town at the moment that you could build something around? What are all these fantastic things that are happening? What are the students fired up about at the moment? One year I had an occupation that was all about fungus, just because we touched on something in science, and there were a whole group of students who were absolutely fascinated about fungus. And it was the right season of the year, autumn, everything was coming out. And we ended up building a whole occupation around. It was actually called Fungi Friend or Foe. So it was all about humans' relationship with fungi. Okay, so that was that around that. If they're really concerned about something, a health issue, something that's going on, things could be built around that. And then, what sorts of projects are possible. So we say our teachers, like I said, their eyes are pointing in two different directions, they're reaching in two different directions in order to plan for the term. So that's how we decide what we're going to offer during the term. The other, they actually have to have their eyes pointing in three directions. On the next one, at the same time, they've got to be kind of planning or at least monitoring what is going on in terms of individual work and learning. And I think that's going to be one of the challenges for all of your schools, is how you document your planning, how you then capture a sense of what's going on. Observation obviously is a key, but there are so many other rich ways of assessment and observation, those sorts of things. How do you record that? What is it important to communicate or write about? I mean, you know, the parents in the school are stakeholders. They have to know a little bit about what's going on. I'm sure they trust us fabulously, but they won't trust us quite so much if we don't communicate about it. So, and that documentation again comes back to your compliance requirements with your body you have to report to again. So it's complex work being a guide for a teacher in an adolescent program. It's really good fun. I really enjoy it as well. There's one other thing that I'd like to speak to on that, and that's this last point down here about how do we get our students to communicate or demonstrate what they have learned. And that comes back to things like formative assessment measures, whether they're presenting or completing an assignment, whether you use rubrics or things. You might develop a rubric of criteria with your students of what makes a really good piece of work, all those sorts of things. There might be quizzes and games or, you know, test questions, whatever those things might be used at different times. There's all sorts of ways, but I encourage you, wherever possible, to try and look for authentic demonstration of learning opportunities. So whether they've undertaken a project and it would be appropriate for them to report back to the planner from the local council about something, that's an authentic demonstration of learning. I mean, whoever the client is, really, if you can use that design sense of having a client and a brief around various projects as much as possible, then needing to communicate back to that client. That client might be the school community about what you've done and what you've learned is really, really powerful. And so if I wanted to pull it back up, but if I was to go back to that shape of the year, in every of one of those 4 school terms, we make sure that we have an opportunity for exhibition or performance or demonstration to the wider school community. So I said it had been a really busy week. The night that I left to go to the airport to fly here, we had a big expo event, which was an exhibition of all of their learning and cultural studies at home. And it was like a carnival of displays, students interpreting what was happening or showing things. There was a speaker's room where students were giving short presentations about their independent projects. There was a food stall set up and they were selling food to the parents. It was an amazing event. So I really encourage you, we have 4 slightly different events each term, to find ways to get your students to have to genuinely demonstrate, perform, exhibit, talk about, interpret their learning to an audience that is not just their friends and their teachers. So I really, that would be a big one I'd love to talk to people about if you want to talk more about that later. You want to see some photographs? Okay, so this is an example of an occupation. I'm going to talk about occupations now in our school. This is an occupation. There was a rotten old deck and they wanted to build a lunch deck. So we made that an occupation. Okay? Clearly, there's lots of documenting of process. Can you see that? Okay. Yep. And tons of mathematics in it. Like there was just so much geometry and measurement built into this project. It was extraordinary. But it was really satisfying. High-level student engagement, even down to things like a student who would lie on top of the lockers and was making like a time-lapse film of the deck being built. So that's clearly an occupation that satisfies that. But I'd like to say that this is also an occupation in our school. So this project is in Australia, you know, originally a Christian nation, so Christmas, where people still talk about Christmas holidays, that sort of thing. The local community has a Christmas pageant, and it always has a bizarre theme every year. And in this year, the bizarre theme was an Aussie Christmas, so very strange. So the occupation project was for the group of students to design and manage and carry out the whole school's entry in the local Christmas pageant. So it was a huge undertaking. They had to really, for their theme, I don't know if this will translate, it was called The Last Chip on the Beach. I don't know. So in Australia, people eat fish and chips at the beach, and the seagulls always come. So I really embarrass myself to be a seagull. Really harassing for the chips at the beach. So the adolescent students who planned this, they decided to impact. Everybody would be a seagull, and they would have the one chip left on the beach, and he was running away from all this. So they had to design the costumes, they had to communicate with the parents of the whole school. There was a real cost they collected for it. Then what they did was they designed costumes that they could make for the small children. And they went and did that. And then they ran workshops in how to be an angry seagull. So that was quite good fun, and they had to do all the timetabling. They built this enormous compass that came at the back. It was humongous that came along. And we are proud to say in that year we won the best one in the school contest. But for us, you can see that's not an occupation that's carrying an element of the science curriculum. It's a project. So for that one, they would use Gantt charts and things like that to plan what needs to happen for this project to take place. It had a really strong design cycle in it. It had a brief. It had a client. We think it was a really effective occupation. Okay, so occupations in our school are purposeful group endeavours. So that means, for me, they have to have a purpose. It's a reason that you're doing the work that you're doing within there. And what I do is I say they have to have a verb in the title. Does that make sense? There has to be a doing word in the title as part of it. And that's the thing that's at the heart of it. They could overlap with just interests and passions. They could, and most often do, overlap with community work, and often they're carried on as community work. Many of them are production and exchange, so starting businesses, catering huge big events. I'll talk about that one later on. And lots of them are opportunities to connect with the wider community. So the pageant was on, we decided we'd do the entry for that. The robotics competition is on. Right now there's an occupation that's about entering the robotics competition. Okay? Sometimes we've had an occupation students have entered in a film festival, International Youth Silent Film Festival. It's fantastic. So the occupation becomes entering in the Youth Silent Film Festival. That can happen as well. They all have connections with more than one of these subject areas. So we have one occupation that, does that mean it's question time? All students, when they begin in our program, their first occupation is to be in the community. So they must learn about their kitchen skills. There's lots of science we know will be covered as part of that. After that, they can choose whatever ones they want to do. They must do one occupation that's based in the garden. Some students do 4 occupations that's based in the garden, but everyone must do at least one. And then I know that living science is covered within there. But for the most part, it doesn't have to be a particular area. I would say that they all have a component of design and technology. They all have a component of language. Many of them is creative arts in there, most of them mathematics, lots of them science, some of them humanities. But there's that interplay going on all the time. We're going to race through. So like I said, central project in the middle, keys of relevant disciplinary learning. There's lots of choose your own adventure within it, depending on the role or what you take on as part of the occupation. And there's always demonstration of your work and learning in some form. Again, bragging rights. There's lots of STEM and STEM in many occupations. Lots of entrepreneurial or enterprise, production and exchange things going on. Lots of connection with general capabilities, particularly that personal and social capability. Lots of choice, lots of authentic assessment opportunities. I reckon occupations are the cornerstone of our program, and I think they're one of the best things about Montessori as a program. I think they're fantastic. Okay, that's just some of the things that will be, hopefully they've all got a verb in the title. Remember I said it had to have. That's just a list of some of the different things that have come up that we've done at different times as part of our occupations. That's in your slides, so I won't put it on there. Okay, so I'm going to whip through some of them. This one is the one that everybody must do in the community. So it culminates, they get their kitchen license skills, they learn lots about, that's actually a digestive system up there. They learn about digestion, nutrition, they learn lots of stuff about recipe modification, they do a lot of cultural research because it culminates in for year 7, so 11 or mostly 12-year-old students. 2 or 3 students run a pop-up restaurant for 20 people with a 2-course meal. And then again, it's an opportunity to invite parents, and all sorts of people. It's an amazing event. You have these 2 youngsters. Yes, they've been supported, but they have planned, decorated, set up this restaurant, prepared 2-course meal for all these people. They cook it, they serve it, they speak to their guests. They do all this sort of thing. Quite incredible. Leading out from that, I talked about catering opportunities. Twice we've had the opportunity to cater for a wedding. And so that event immediately becomes an occupation. You can't miss a chance to do something like that. Okay? It's like the finals of MasterChef. I don't know if you know what MasterChef is, but so this particular one, that was the crew that were the occupation group at that time. They spent the whole term planning and working on this. It was amazing. It was in the grounds of the old house that's on the estate where we're based. And they prepared all the food and made these amazing picnic hampers. They bought the hampers, they stitched the linings in, they did these wonderful menus, and then after the people were married in the gardens, that our kids were creeping around everywhere, so excited, and there were like picnic sites with barrows of alcoholic drinks under the trees and games going on, and these wonderful picnic baskets. This is just the beginning. While all the wedding photographs happened. And then all the people, I'm not kidding, there were 180 guests. They came up to the house and we made these long tables on the road with the space outside the house. The local butcher did the meat, cooked all the meat on rotisserie. And our students had made all the salads, they made the bread, they made the cake. That was so exciting, you know, to make the wedding cake, this kind of thing. It was such a high stakes event. And they were paid for it. So we had to put in a, you know, a offer, what is it, I can't remember, like a tender, you know, we had to put our price down for our services and this sort of thing. So they were paid several $1,000s, I think it was about $2,500 to do this event. So they had to do all the budgeting, they had to figure it all out as they went through. It was absolutely amazing. It was an opportunity that we took. And I'll never forget, at the end there was a band and a dance floor and all this sort of thing, and all the bridesmaids came and got the students. They were all wearing these aprons. And they said, come and dance with us. And there was a moment where suddenly, from all the people dancing at the wedding, all these aprons shot up into the air. They threw their aprons up when they were so proud of themselves as part of their event. So many other ones. So lots of this is actually catering the meeting of adolescent guides. They might run a stall from the garden, they've taken their stall, this was when they did a lot of preserving food, they take it to the primary school. This was a big cafe when the fancy gardens are open to the public. We would run a cafe over that weekend, and sometimes there's like 800 or 900 people come through the cafe over the weekend. It's hard and fast work. So again, an opportunity that we could take up to do that. A different kind of occupation, we built a pizza oven. So there's lots of, so much measurement, and of course the wonderful Roman arch that they had for the mount of that there. That was a really fantastic problem-solving one. Chickens, before we had chickens at the school, we ran it was the third chicken occupation that we got chickens. We weren't ready for them before then. So by the end, there was one student who said, before I go, we must have chickens, you know, and eventually we got it. And then they took the children over to show them out. This one was going to a local landholder's property, and we do an olive harvest. So we go for a day's labour, and we pick a ton of olives, and then we take them and we have them pressed into olive oil. And again, there's so many maths opportunity. We ran competitions on the day, or guess how many olives is in the thing, or how would you figure out how much oil one olive produces. Maths. But actually, it was fantastic fun, hard work up on the hillside. There's my dog. It's wonderful. And then we can, you know, do the labelling and package up the olive oil. Mostly we use it in our kitchen, but sometimes we give it as gifts or sell it to people as well. So again, I'll fill that one. Money is very important. So this is counting up the money. We do a cafe every term at school. Adolescent students handling money, I think Montessori would say it is let me get this right, like a concrete abstraction or concrete material abstraction of our work. I think seeing the money that their labour has earned, it's not enough to pay them wages. That's an interesting conversation to have with students. They are supported to do this work, but their work turns this, whatever money we put in, into this. So it's a really, really interesting thing to go through. Funnily enough, we've found with our catering, whether it's our little cafes or big ones, typically we have about a 66% profit. Which is, it's interesting, it's always around that mark. Obviously we're not paying wages, but that's been an interesting pattern. I think I already, did I show you that one already? Yes. What's the time frame? Would you like to ask anything about occupation? And then I'll talk about some other things about building and strengthening your adolescent community. Or we can leave it and ask it. So, I think we do a lot of work and study together. And I think clearly they're really important components of any program. But you can't underestimate that thing of really building a sense of community. And to some extent, we can make the environment or the conditions, we can prepare ourselves, we can do what we can to make it more likely that a strong sense of community will develop. But we can't actually make it happen. That really has to come out of the interactions of the adults. And a colleague of ours, when we all met recently, he talked, very well I thought, he talked about tools, rules, and fools. And I will explain myself on this. So I've been speaking about some of the tools that we use to make meaningful work, and a lot of that will contribute. Working together does contribute to what are the structures, what are the necessary materials, what are the necessary tools that we need to do that work together. He also spoke about what are the necessary rules. And by that, we mean, again, things like the timetable. Working to a bit of a schedule is a rule. It's like creating order out of chaos. Okay? There are other rules in how we behave towards one another. And I think I'm not very good at quoting Montessori directly, but I know I've read something in the appendices to which hopefully you've all read the appendices at the back. But this idea that there should be structures and routines that make it easy to transition to productive work. So really we don't want too much, we don't want too many rules, we should have just what is necessary in order to have a smooth community, to make it easy for students to work well, to make it easy for students to interact well. One of the tools, I think, is meeting together as a community. So actually, I don't think it's on there, maybe not on there, but having community meetings, forums that you know you're going to gather and have an opportunity to raise issues and concerns is a really, really important part of the community. That way, when there are issues, perhaps it leads to another rule or another agreement on something. But we've had time, our students are pretty good, I've got to say, but there are times when there have been interactions between students that are not melting and wholesome, like they are, people have said and done wrong things to each other. Generally, they'll be brought either quietly and privately or publicly to attention. And that's great, because then it leads on to developing further rules. So we have a current document that's called the Respectful Interactions Agreement. And if you do have a look in here, I'm pretty sure it's in there. It might not be in my copy of it, I stuck it in there. But it was after there was some nasty things said, anyway, some comments being made about people. A group of students were sort of elected out of each advisory group. They agreed to get 2 or 3 representatives from each advisory group, and they came together and worked out this respectful agreement policy. So that's an example of and then every single student signed it, that they agreed that this stuff was important. It was talked about a lot. That's an example of a necessary rule coming into being. I'm pretty sure most communities would do something like that and do it every year, really. But it's good when it kind of arises. So there's necessary rules. We don't want too many. We want just what we need. But the idea, I think, so some of these things are what I call running threads. They're running through community life all of the time. Some of them are rules, some of them are tools. Some of them speak to what I would call fools. So the idea of having fun together, silly traditions, celebrations, in-jokes, just those kind of things that develop. We've got a couple of games. I don't know, they always say, can we play Kiwi Ball? Kiwi Ball is some invented game that the rules change every single time we get together on it. But it's a tradition of our community that's just going over. 1 year at camp, it involved you had to have a plane coming on your head or you couldn't catch it. Whatever. I'm sure you find that it's part of the joy of being with a community of young people is embracing those things that emerge as you go. So I was just going to show you a couple of things. Some of them are what I would call threads that run continuously through community life. The second set are big events, doing big things together. Some of them are work-related, others are more community-related, but both running threads and big events or big endeavours help to really strongly build that sense of community as a whole. Does that make sense? There isn't a lot of crazy words in there. So, all the ongoing work of the community, eating together, all these traditions and rituals and things that happen, reflections, puns, jokes, things that get read out and shared. Serious stuff, identifying and resolving issues, acknowledging and celebrating actions, particularly of other people, finding the words to do both of these things. We can really help one another with that. Those late afternoons that are shared together. And this is actually a really cool one. I've got a picture about it. But when our old students come back, that's a really nice thing that spontaneously happens from time to time. And there's some lovely connection from that. So yeah, I'll whip through these. So anyway, breaking bread, you can just keep kind of scribbling down. So chores and community work in the afternoon, that's Robert. They love Robert. Groundsman, biggest hero ever. Everybody thinks he's fabulous. But yeah, lots of building things, putting things together. Again, just chores or community work outside. And the next one. Some of those traditions, students who organised a bike ride for everyone to go on, picnics when we're out and about. We have a market challenge. If we're ever in the city, we have a really tight budget. So whatever group you're in, you get about $3 a student. And you've got to do the best picnic lunch you can with it. And it's really good fun when you're making the decisions. Reading and sharing poetry or reflections together. This is just outside our kitchen and they're eating outside. And again, camps. Oh, camps are the best thing ever. Next one. Now that photograph I put in there, I don't know if you know Settlers of Catan, it's a board game, but we've got a lot of board games at school. They are brilliant because they're playing a game with all the fabulous stuff that the constraints and rules of a game bring out, but they're social. They're so directly face-to-face social, and you can eat and you can talk and you can do other things while you're playing them. But that's in a late afternoon, and I really love it because in that there's a returning Year 11 student, there's 2 returning Year 10 students, there's two Year 10 students from our school at that time, and there's a Year 7 student. And they're all together going, yeah, let's have a game after school. So that's really lovely. And there's that same slide. Oh, yeah, and then we talked about sort of big endeavours. So taking on service outside of the school, that builds community within the school. All of their we've done publishing ventures where we've tried to put magazines out with other Montessori adolescent programs. It's quite hard work. It's fantastic when that comes off. Planning and running big events, especially if it involves the public or little kids from the primary school or guests or anybody from outside. Catering, our cabaret is just wonderful. I just think that Carlos spoke to the idea of theatre. Putting on performances together is amazing. Everybody's involved in more than one way of putting those events on. We've had sort of big simulation experiences. This is a group that take action and service outside of the school, and they're going away. So again, we'll have a look at some images. All of these are in this, we've seen that one, that was the pageant. That these kids are in a pageant in a different year where they were all like puppets in there. This was a publishing thing with a group of other Montessori schools. That was an interaction with a refugee program down in the city. They did a combined art project. This is a really big, like a three-day, 2-night simulation exercise of what it is like to actually live in poverty. Of course it's not real, it's a simulation, but it's really well thought out to get some provoking of thoughts with students. Again, if you're interested, I'm happy to tell you some more about it. That was a huge achievement as part of that simulation, where they had to cart enough water to be the minimum water per day for that previous simulation. and they had to lug it up this huge hill from a creek at the bottom and get it there, and this is when they proudly had brought enough, and really felt the labour to bring this water down. Yeah, lots of performance things and arts. That was part of another one of the pageants where we had this giant animal picture that they made. Performance, we'll keep going. Camps. On this one particular camp, the community building one of the traditions that has evolved, we go away separately, boys and girls, and camp separately for the first part of the camp. It's a lot about like the older girls welcoming the younger girls into the community, and the same with the boys. But then we started this a few years back. A couple of the boys came over to the girls' camp and said, actually we must have planned it beforehand, but anyway, they did come and issue an invitation. And so on the second night, the boys host the girls to dinner, like just with your camp, you know, play all this kind of thing in the woods. But they made it so beautiful with candles along the path, and they came and escorted them. It was really yucky dinner, but the event was absolutely fabulous. And so the girls were doing breakfast the next morning, and they went, ooh, that was wonderful. We must do a much better job. And so they quickly created this beautiful thing, and they cooked breakfast for the boys and invited them to breakfast. It's become a tradition now that we do at the beginning of each year. And these are some of the camps and expeditions, one of my favourite things. Love doing that. And that shot's actually from I was talking about, we go to Indonesia every second year, and it's a beautiful image. Because we go back and stay at the guest house of this family, and a couple of times we've had students, the same student return and go on the trip for a second time. She was reconnecting with these girls that she'd met 2 years before on that trip. It's beautiful. Oh my God, there's more. So this is really speaking ongoing, going forward. One of the things we were asked to speak about at this gathering, I hope this is really useful, are some of the ongoing tensions that we still battle with. So quantity versus quality in your learning program. I talked about the formal curriculum. We have to have courage to decide what we think is really every student must learn, what we think every student should learn, and what we think some students could learn. And I think it's really important that we whittle it down to what are the really essential things, the keys. And then have a kind of a trust that if some students are doing this, some students are doing this, and some students are doing this, they're going to get enough exposure to those other things to learn about. I really think it's something we wrestle with all the time. This year, our mantra, actually it's going to be next year now, we didn't do it, is going to be simplify. Because we do so many things, it becomes so crowded, everybody's having a great time, but exhausted. And so I think less is more is a pretty big key that we need to go into. This one, the disciplinary versus interdisciplinary. When we set out, we had a dream that it would all be interdisciplinary. Great big projects and all the learning would be attached to it. Actually, that got pretty confusing pretty quickly. So I think it's, again, managing that thing between really important disciplinary keys. You actually need to understand what it is to work as a mathematician, to work as a scientist, to work in all the different ways that language and communication are important, to work as a historian, to work as a geographer. Some of the key concepts and skills in there, and then you can usefully bring that to interdisciplinary projects. So I think that balance is really important. Freedom and structure. I love having a timetable, but as I said, it has to have spaces in it where there's freedom and choice and the possibility to change things around and be flexible. It has to be able to be responsive. This is an interesting one we've just been talking about. Do we help our students too much? Sometimes I think that big adult ratio is great and it's really important. Sometimes it means we're too available and we help them too much. Something we're really looking at. Also finding, remembering that you can let students decide. You know, there has to be spaces for student decision making, that sort of thing. This is an interesting one. And I think it's something we have to be on guard for a lot of the time. Particularly, Alex was talking to her complicated staffing and timetabling yesterday. We do have to look after the adults that work in our communities. But sometimes it can slide in the direction of adult conditions over adolescent needs. And I think it's something we need to question ourselves about again and again and again. And to be honest, I think it's my job as a coordinator of the program. Mostly I'm a teacher within the program, absolutely like the others, that's my main job. But I think some of these things, my job is to be the guardian and to really go, hang on a minute here, we need to come back to our touchstone things and go, is that just because that makes it easier to do? You know? So I think that's an interesting tension. And I spoke already a little about this planning and responsiveness. And this relates to this. When it was all about being responsive and seeing where we were going, it was killing the adults that worked in the program. So having a structure that we work to, but that then still has that flexibility within it. I feel at the moment we've got a good balance, but we will have to be ever vigilant and be watching where these things go. Good luck to you guys with that as well. And I think again, all of that comes back to your adults and your team and having time to meet and work through these things and having touchstone things that you come back to that are really important to you as a group within there. And again, I didn't actually write it up here, but I don't know if others have experienced this, but occasionally has been that little bit of, not jealousy, but attention. It doesn't affect me so directly, but it does affect our school principal between resources and staffing and attention paid to the adolescent program or the Erdkinder versus the younger end of the school. And so I think really feeling that we are a whole staff is so important. And so we're always inviting in both directions. Actually last night, the rest of my team, they were at the play that the upper elementary students were doing. And really feeling that we're all part of the same thing. Inviting cross connections wherever you can. Hosting the preschool the other day, that was a huge win. Everybody was happy. Preschool parents loved coming there. Kids had a great time, our students learned heaps, and their staff really appreciated that we did that for them. But we still have to remember, we're not the same as the elementary, we have different needs in there. Okay, so, almost at the end. I was frantically in PowerPoint land this morning. I was lost in there. I didn't have any breakfast because I was trapped in PowerPoint land. And what I was searching for was a photograph of students actually working at desks in the classroom. Because I want to reassure you that actually we do a lot of the time the students are getting on with their ongoing work, using a computer, or working in the workforce, or collaborating with others. Unfortunately with me, I couldn't find any pictures because they don't look so interesting, pictures. But obviously if you're outside and doing big projects and being creative, it makes much more interesting photography. So I just want to reassure you that actually we do spend a lot of time working. There's many places they can work. There's a lot of freedom for that. A lot of different spaces. There's a lot of rules around if you take a computer, what that means. Managing technology, I haven't even talked about that. Managing technology in the adolescent program. But we do spend a lot of time engaged in their academic work. We are able to do the rich other things because they take responsibility for their work at home. Our expectation when parents ask is that students will take some of their independent work home at least 3 times a week. We don't set homework, but they should be making a choice of what to do at home. They should be all those blue areas in the timetable, they should be working well. They have work priorities to get on with in there. So I apologise that there are not many photographs of that, but please trust me that it does happen. It's not all sunshine and flowers along the way. So that was the only one I could find. And in fact, in that one, I actually really love this. This is my small group of Year 10 students running rotating workshops to teach the Year 8s and 9s about covalent bonding, ionic bonding, and metallic bonding in chemistry. And it was really good, so they each got to run their little workshop 4 times and teach together. So it's still not independent individual work, but it's the best photo I could do. And that was in term 2. In term 3, we were all working on geology. So I liked it when the learning that's happening in here, we go out to this quarry, and there were on our camp, and there were 4 different rock types visible in this quarry face. And they had to use their brains and their learning and their observation and a little bit of imagination and figure out the age order of the rock types. So these boys are up on there having a look at the dolerite dike running down through good luck. running down through the face of the quarry. So it's really great when we can take this learning and explicitly ask them to apply that learning out there. So trying to find ways to do that is a really great thing to do as well. We've got a lovely adolescent community, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for your presentation of your wonderful program. I want to know, is this adolescent program very much affordable for every family, or is it more for privileged families? And I also got question number 2. Do you have any mentorship system in place in the school, any kind of mentorship?
Okay, so the first question I'm very pleased to answer because I stood exactly there yesterday and I asked the same question.
That's right.
So our school, our particular school is an independent school. So it has fees that are paid, but in Australia every student attracts government funding. So, and we're not what I would call a posh private school, we're a lower fee paying independent school. So the fees at our school for the adolescent program are about $10,000 Australian dollars a year, which I think if I go backwards, someone do the maths for me? No. Oh, it doesn't matter. So yes, there are fees to pay at our school. Now I know Alex's school is also a small independent school, and most of the Montessori schools in Australia are. However, there are a couple of schools that are running public school programs. So again, I think they pay a small extra bit to be in the Montessori section of it, but most of it's public. So some of our parents have to try really hard to even pay that much. But we have a support program. I'm on the school finance committee, and a really big part of our work is managing this Montessori education assistance program to support families to be in there. But it's not free. I acknowledge that. The second question was about mentorship. And do you mean with adults or with students?
Yeah, both.
That's a good question. Informally, lots and lots. People are, might like the boy going over and working in the preschool and that sort of thing. So things like that would happen. We'll often set up students with a mentor if they're particularly with independent projects. In fact, it's not a requirement, but they're strongly encouraged to connect with an expert or something, that sort of thing. It's something we would like to see more of. Our year 9 and 10 students also do work experience for a week each year when they're in that year. And so I guess in a way that's not really mentorship, but they get an experience of being in an organisation or a workplace. Does that answer the question?
How about the like mental or spiritual support for the students?
Do you mean like well-being support?
Yeah, or if they have like emotional needs.
Yeah. So lots of students will come and will speak with, maybe they feel more comfortable with a particular adult in the program. We also have a school wellbeing worker, and so she's like a school counsellor. She's fantastic, and she has one day at the other campus, one day definitely with our campus, and she also sometimes runs programs and things there. And then she has another afternoon that's flexible. So students, actually they're really comfortable, they go to her around different things. So she's got a number of students she's catching up with semi-regularly, but maybe they just go for a walk together and talk about that. Sometimes we refer students to her. Sometimes if they're sensitive about it, they will actually meet her at the main school. So the others don't see that they're meeting her. And she's only been in the school for had that program for about 4 years. It's fantastic. Really helpful for the adults to go, here, you take care of it. Any other questions?
Hi, I might have missed this part again.
Sorry,
I might have missed this part, but is it possible to describe a typical decision-making process for choosing the occupations?
Absolutely. I brought a bunch of documents that may or may not be of interest to people, but one of them, somewhere in here, is Tuesday. I'll show it to you other ones. So we used to do it verbally. We would stand up and go, this occupation is about getting chickens, whatever. But now we actually make a sheet, a Tuesday sheet, and it has a little blurb about all the choices. And so on that first day back, when they have some free time during the morning, they'll have a bit of a read. If they want to ask any questions about it, they do. And then each individual student marks down their preferences, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, or if they need to say, want us to know something, they write that on there. And so then it's just literally an exercise in going through them and sorting them out. We say you will most likely get your first or second preference. So most times students get their first preference. Sometimes they get the second preference. If they're not going to get one of those, I have a conversation with them and we work it out. And it just might be that something's very popular, or it might be that actually you and you were sick and tired of not working well together, so we just cunningly put that one in their first preference and that one can go in the second preference. There's a little bit of manipulation. Yeah, so we just kind of figure it out as we go. I quite like timetabling and sorting things out like that, so I usually do that.
Are these contributed by the students ahead of time?
Do you mean what
the blurbs?
What the actual choice is?
Yeah, the choices of the blurbs. So lots of the ideas come from student suggestions, or it might be if something was really popular, they really want us to run that again, down the track we do it again. A lot of it is also backed up by the guides as well. So anybody who's contributing, and so the PE teacher, the art specialist, Actually, our teaching specialist, sometimes she runs a creative one, so we call it culinary arts, and she might do, she did one that was all about meat, and we had a lot of students who are vegetarian, but we have some other students who are really interested in meat, so they went each week to the butcher, and the butcher taught them all this. Whatever it's going to be, whoever's contributing, they email in their blurbs, and I put them in the sheet, and then students have a little about it. Yeah. Does that answer that?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah. But I'll show, I have a copy of one example here, I'll show you one. And any other questions?
I know you did the Montessori orientation for adolescent studies, but how do you echo that to the 6 other guys that you have in the environment?
Well, I guess our program, we've looked at the plan of study and work, and I've actually gone through the mapping exercise where we have a look at those important things. Our dream would be that all of our teaching guides take the orientation, and we had one lined up to do it last year, but she actually became pregnant and it wasn't going to be working. So eventually we'll get our teachers to do that, but I guess through a lot of it's not the same as having the experience of being in there, but I think a lot of the elements of that, they in fact brought to the program in other ways. So I guess a lot of talking, reflecting, reading, it is mentoring, I guess, that's right. That's true. But yeah, I would love if they could. In actual fact, I would love a couple of them to take orientation now that they have been immersed for a while, to then go and do it and really reflect on it and think about important things that we could change. We do a lot of talking. Any other questions? Thank you so much for your patience.
非常谢谢上午的讲座。在今天用餐之前呢，有一个小小的活动预告，就是之后呢，以未来教育基金会会跟师大翻译所合作开一门课程，希望能够培育蒙特梭利相关的口译人员。所以如果你有兴趣想要参与这样子的培训课程活动，这样的简章呢会放在外面的午餐桌上面，所以欢迎领取。如果你有任何问题，也